There has been meetings led by the Prime Minister. Their Finance Minister has been talking of sustained revival of the economy.
Our economy's doing well business is largely because the confidence in what has happened in the last 2 years, palpably felt by people who so deserve it, are standing out. And that is why I would think that the economy's revival is on a sustained path.
And just like every year, various sectors have their own set of expectations from the budget, including India INC. Here is what India INC is expecting from the Modi government: increased privatizations, increase in capex, and more employment-linked incentive schemes. The CII says that the government should reduce rates of personal income tax to increase disposable incomes and revive the demand. The government is talking about making India a manufacturing hub.
So as much you're preparing yourself for a long-drawn recession in the Western world, the developed world, I would think it is also the best time for you to work out strategies for drawing those manufacturers from there to India.
Will Budget 2023 deliver on all these aspirations? Bureau Report, Republic TV.
To table budget at around 11 a.m. Before that, she will be leaving from her residence at around 9:15. She will be heading to Finance Minister and then to President House and then to Parliament, where a short cabinet meet will take place and then budget would be tabled. After this very short break, we will be getting more and more voices as there are a lot of expectations from this very budget. Stay tuned for all the live updates.
11,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers, I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs to India.
India is undoubtedly the global bright spot. Now the world is watching whether Budget 2023 will be a catalyst to India's growth story. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं
India has a vision how this world should look like and how India's role should look like in this changing world. And we are working very hard to make it happen in the General Assembly.
$11,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं। मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं। आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास सो आई नो, बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है।
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I am expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है। एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है, स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है।
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए, क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं। वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स के जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए। तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार को चाहिए कि एक एमनेस्टी स्कीम दी जाए देश भर के सभी व्यापारियों को कि 2022 तक जो कुछ हो गया वो हो गया, लेकिन 2023 से हम डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी पर चलेंगे। लेकिन
Very good evening, friends. As we build up to the rolling coverage of Union Budget with Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister of the country, taking the podium inside the Lok Sabha at 11 a.m. And of course, we build up to coming off Arnab Goswami and take charge. Let's begin with the headlines. As the world gives a thumbs up, the countdown to much-awaited budget has now begun. Opposition set to raise unemployment and inflation. It's a tightrope walk for Nirmala. IMF predicts only growth for India. All eyes now on the budget 2023. Modi government 2.0 is set to present last full budget ahead of 2024 polls. Nirmala set to roll out budget. Aam Aadmi asks, are tax cuts on the cards? Unmissable budget coverage with Arnab and team shortly, live. All right, very good morning and welcome, friends, as we begin our build-up to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman taking center stage inside Parliament and presenting what's billed as the Modi government's last full budget ahead of the 2024 general elections, third for the Modi government. Joining me live, Suhail Seth. He's joining us live from Goa, Managing Partner, Council H India and Brand Guru. Also joining me, Ashish Wakankar, Founder and CIO, Equipoise Capital. And also Emma Venkatesh, political analyst and lawyer, live from Dubai. In fact, giving us some global flavor there. Let me begin with Suhail. You first, Brand Guru. And you know, macros look good. The direct tax mop up really looking good at 25% above the last time. The GST, in fact, the numbers came last evening at the second highest in the history of the tax rollout at 1.55 lakh crore rupees. Manufacturing activity at its highest as indicated by the Purchasing Managers Index numbers. And of course, since you keep a close tab on the services industry, I was looking at headlines. The banking loans are up to services much more than manufacturing industry. As Brand Guru, Suhail, how does Brand India look as we prepare for Nirmala Sitharaman's budget in a couple of hours from now?
In the case of Indira Gandhi, it looked very good from near the moon, but today from planet Earth, it looks splendid. I've always been a great optimist. I've always said that some of the things that Modi has done, people may abuse him in the short term, but in the long term, they will thank him. Look at some of the big piece items that have happened. Number one, Apple has shifted large parts of its manufacturing to India. It's a great piece of news for the whole Made in India platform. Number two, as you rightly talked about GST, it's a great tribute on this day to the late Arun Jaitley, who brought about GST and the IBC. So everyone at that time were naysayers, ki kuch nahi hoga, it's a bad idea, but you've seen how it works. I think India is doing phenomenally well. Phenomenally well for two reasons. Number one, the government. This is, as I've said earlier, this is the cleanest union cabinet post-independence. It augurs well. There is no policy, Machiavellian behavior which we used to see in the past. For all the people who said things, I will still say Nirmala Sitharaman has been an outstanding finance minister. Shaktikant Das has been an even more outstanding governor of the Reserve Bank. And when both took office, people were doubting, what will happen? What has the government done? It has done four things. Number one, it has proven the fact that policies will be for all, one policy which will benefit everyone. Number two, the government has disallowed any leakage where there were direct benefit transfers. Let me tell you one thing. People will thank Modi in the years to come when free rations were given during the most heinous period of human existence, which was during the pandemic. These were direct benefit transfers. Rajiv Gandhi had once famously said out of every 1 rupee, only 15 paisa reaches the intended recipient. That has been done away with. Number three, you very rightly alluded to the fact that, look, more and more people are investing. Look at the investments that are taking place in India.
Yes.
Look at the way people are actually warming up. Now, with our presidency of G20, India will be even at a greater global high table.
Yes.
The fourth final thing is that today we are protected from global headwinds because of the intrinsic nature of our economy, which is a domestic consumptive economy.
Yeah.
We don't need the Chinese or the Americans or the Fijians or the Norwegians to buy our goods.
Yeah.
We've got a robust economy.
Yeah.
My only worry, and I know Modi and Sitharaman will address that, my worry is bring back the MSME to the strengths that they were before. Because the MSME sector has been badly hurt.
Yeah.
And it's been hurt for various reasons. If we are able to bring that back,
Yeah.
you've got a great story. You've got great
So
startup India, you've got great digital India, and you've got a great brand India.
Yeah. So, the last point that you made, MSME, in fact, was mentioned in the economic survey yesterday as a bright spot. In fact, the chief economic advisor gave the example of how almost 500 MSMEs contributed to INS Vikrant, the new aircraft carrier that India built on its own. And also, you rightly mentioned, Suhail, that the capital expenditure that has been done by the government has in fact crowded in private investment as well. And that's being seen from the uptick that's there in the loan books of banks to the private sector. Let me take this to MR Venkatesh. MR, budget, as much as it is an accounting document of the government, it is also a policy document and hence used for political signaling. The fact that we are almost every time mentioning that this is the last full budget ahead of the general elections, are you suspecting, expecting that there might be an element of populism or something looking ahead into the general elections in the budget?
Let me put it this way. I have been watching budgets since 1985. And since I graduated from high school, I've been a budget fanatic, I would say, confess. Last night I couldn't sleep. For the first time, I'm so excited because of only one reason. We have never been in such a sweet spot ever before. Economic sweet spot, I think we are virtually there as a country. Of course, a dil mange more, probably we can go up to 8% or 8.5% growth. But we know we have just come back from a horrible pandemic shutdown, and we have just turned the clock 180 degrees. We are back to our normal growth. So that is a big headline. And the second important headline, which probably you alluded to, is that the fiscal position of the government, central government, is at its very best today. In the sense that today we are seeing a robust tax collection, not only of GST, but also of direct taxes. Now, you go back and unwind the clock for the year 21-22, you will see that we are going to collect somewhere around 5 lakh crores more than the budget. And this year, again, we are going to collect something close to 4 to 5 lakh crores over and above the budget. That's going to be humongous. That is the type of revenue that is coming in. If this revenue comes in, obviously the government will have to spend, and that is being spent on capital expenditure, that will be spent on revenue expenditure, both sides. Now, there will be headroom for the finance minister in the run-up to the general elections, not to be reckless, but she can definitely take care of the welfare program and the measures that the government promised. There could be a number of policy play. It could be a small tax cut in salaried classes, in the direct tax fund. The petrol prices could be reduced. The multitude of headroom that the finance minister has is mind-boggling today. The third one, lastly, you always start, the pundits today will start moaning and groaning at the fiscal deficit. And virtually it has become an persona non grata as far as economists are concerned in the Indian context, because we have seen fiscal deficits and fiscal deficits and fiscal deficits. What we have done, we have changed the very narrative of fiscal deficit thanks to this government, which has put that money into capital expenditure, and capex, as Mr. Suhail Seth rightly pointed out, is crowding in public prayers, and the virtuous cycle in the banks has begun. The capital expenditure cycle has begun. Banks are lending more, banks are lending big time, and slowly we see that the bank's book being cleaned, that the policy paralysis that was there, the legacy of the UPA government has been cleaned, the Prevention of Corruption Act has been amended. Okay, there can be objections to it, but that is secondary. Then the LCLT procedures are now streamlined. So the banks are feeling confident to lend. So you see all around there is virtue signaling happening. Only thing, and I would request the finance minister, go bold for a massive tax cut. Tax cut, and this may be the time. Reduce the GST from 18% to 16%. That would be a phenomenal boost. It will cut down inflation. It will keep the buoyancy going, and it will be it will be a huge signal to the Indian market. Okay, I think that could be the mother of all populism, mother of all welfareism, mother of all economic policies, all rolled into one. Okay, and that constitutes excellent conservative economics as well, Emma Venkatesh. You know, we'll come to those things in greater detail as we continue our conversation. Let me involve Ashish Wakankar also. He brings in the markets perspective. Ashish, you know, for the last so many years now, the markets have been expecting something will happen on the long-term capital gains tax, something will happen on the securities transaction tax. But somehow I think the finance minister has not really been in a mood to oblige. You think it could happen this time? And what's the markets ask? What's really going to cheer the markets? If you have some thoughts on that to begin with.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back on this budget day, and good morning my co-panelists as well. First and foremost, I think it is important to take a look at what we have achieved in the last, say, 3, 4, 5 years on a continuous basis. Budget after budget. Unlike the developed world, and I've said this in the past 2 budgets as well, unlike the developed world, which probably did not learn its lesson, and after post the GFC, and at that time India was also along with the developed world, we gave a stimulus, and it was a consumption-led stimulus. What you had was a massive inflation and a collapse in economic growth. India is the only country, in my opinion, which learned its lesson, and during this pandemic, we deviated away from convention. And when I mean convention, I'm looking at the developed world. They again went the same path, and you had stimulus given by them. India's stimulus was more to protect the MSMEs, and we went on the investment-led growth. We are witnessing, just to give a number in perspective, we are probably the only country in the world which has managed to increase the tax to GDP ratio during the pandemic. We are probably the only country in the world which has managed to bring down debt as a percentage of GDP in the last few years. Not just this, just take a look at where we were 5 or 6 years back as far as external debt is concerned. We have brought that down also from 24%, we are barely down to now 19%, and within that, nearly 30+% of that external debt is rupee oriented. So I could just go on and on in terms of the positives that are there, and coming to the specific question on the markets. Well, somebody just said, "Dil mange more," and there is no end to what somebody could, and the markets could keep on asking. It is important, I must highlight over here, that India needs the capital. India's tax collection is not good enough for meeting its infrastructure requirements, so we need external capital for sure. But whatever steps in terms of the capital gains the market has, that the government has taken or the budget has announced, has the market reacted negatively to that? Have we not seen the markets go up significantly, post May 2020, and that too year on year? We've seen a tough year last year, but even then we've seen a positive 4 to 5% return that the markets have given. So I don't really think the markets are too worried about on the capital gains. There is an expectation, and maybe that could be done post the elections as well, of rationalizing and bringing some kind of streamlining towards the period, towards the long-term and short-term capital gains tax that is levied. But I think the one number, I'll just complete this, the one number the market is really fixated on is the capital expenditure. If that number continues to show the growth that we have seen in the last 3-4 years, the quality of the deficit matters, not the absolute number itself. So if you look at even the economic survey that was announced yesterday, it's a hugely positive and outlook that the economic survey document brings out.
Right.
And if we are actually looking at even say 10% growth, nominal growth next year, we should see the fiscal deficit go below. And as the economic survey projects nearly 11% nominal growth, we are in the range of 5.8 to 5.9 fiscal deficit in FY24.
Yes.
So all in all, I don't think market is really worried. The one thing I particularly will be looking at, and I'm sure the market is looking at, is the quality of the deficit and the initiative that was taken, the impetus
Mr.
that was given
Wakankar,
through capital expenditure. That remains. We are home.
Yeah, Ashish, we are also joined by Nasir Salim. He is managing partner, Flexi Capital. In fact, I am told that any moment now we would be joined by Arnab Goswami, our editor-in-chief. I wanted to come to Sohail, but let me go to Nasir Salim first. Sohail, since you are in Goa and hence perhaps a little close to Russia, I would want to talk to you about global headwinds and some areas of concern. But let me begin with Nasir Salim. Nasir, we had Ashish Wakankar just mentioning that the government can't be sort of doing all the heavy lifting. There has to be some coming in of external capital as well. What measures do you think that the government and Nirmala Sitharaman could be announcing, or you could be expecting that they find mention in the budget so that that bit is taken care of?
You see, there is no doubt. Firstly, good morning to all your viewers and to all of you. And thank you for having me on your show. See, I think there are 2-3 very key important factors here. I think as we set out the day for the budget and our expectations, and I completely feel the need to mention this today, is that we are looking more particularly today the importance of fiscal prudence with infrastructure investment coming. So there has to be a fiscal discipline with infrastructure spending that we need to see. I think a fiscal prudence budget is something which we are looking forward to. The markets have also kind of factored in all future, reports to expect what the Honorable Finance Minister is going to state out today. But to answer your specific question, see, there is no doubt that today we are in a global turmoil. I mean, India is in a sweet spot, no doubt. We've had favorable demographics, consumption, helping us. And we've also seen a very interesting, chapter fold up as far as India is concerned in terms of, these new tech startups.
No.
So to answer your question, if I need to look at one key expectation from the budget for attracting FDI, my sense is that, the government has outlined, there are 13 sectors which are currently outlined for the PLI. I would be happy to hear more about inclusion of further sectors. So your production-linked incentive today has already outlined 13 sectors. There are sectors such as the leather industry, which are very important in the MSME space as far as India is concerned. There are other sectors related to automobiles and so on and so forth. I think certain of those sectors which can be included in the PLI.
I'm interrupting you because Arnab has joined us, so it's over to him now, actually.
Yeah, thanks very much, Abhishek. Sorry I got a little late out here. I thought we were discussing the big picture. First of all, good morning to everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Nice and sunny morning. Warm morning in Mumbai. I don't know. Mumbai never has, it has never had a spot of winter. And when it got down to 16 or 17 degrees, everyone was out there, in their mufflers and monkey caps and everything. Point being, this is a pre-election budget.
Yeah.
Right? And the Modi government is having these pre-budget meetings with all the stakeholders ahead of the budget. The intent is to hear the concerns of all the stakeholders. Has the budget become less important, Sohail? As an instrument, has the budget, please unmute yourself. Has the budget become less important than it used to be?
It has. I'll tell you why the budget has become less important under Narendra Modi. Because certain laws and certain policies have been taken regardless of politics. Remember that day, Arnab, when GST was being brought in by Jaitley, when IBC was being brought in, everyone abused this government. What did the government do? Disregarded it. When a caravan moves, it doesn't stop just to notice every barking dog. I think the government has also exhibited another thing, that policies will be created If you have an issue with the policy and if you think it's mala fide, take us to court. But we're not going to change the policy because of either lobbies or vested interest. This has shown remarkably well for us as a country. 1.55 lakh crores is what you mopped up in GST yesterday. Number two, what Gadkari and therefore the Union Cabinet under Modi are doing in terms of public spending in infrastructure is remarkable. My only thing, Arnab, and you know, the Indian Hotels company which runs the Taj has declared phenomenal results yesterday. It shows if this government gives tourism and real estate though they have through REIT, but if they give tourism infrastructure type rating, let's say if they type rate tourism also as infrastructure, it'll make bank lending easier at more competitive rates. We are in a great place, Arnab. For all the naysayers, for all the goddamn BBCs of the world, we are in a great shape while those Johnnies are worried about, you know, food coupons. So let's not belittle our country in order to expand our hatred politically.
Absolutely.
You know, the opposition must realize they are opposition in India. They're not the opposition of Pakistan or of Fiji. For once, give the man some credit. For once, cut the government some slack. And for once behave like responsible Indians who believe in India, the cause of India, the potential of India, and what India has achieved.
I want
we should all celebrate this, not denigrate it.
This gloom and doom behavior has to stop, you know, like yesterday. Everybody, all the gloom and doom guys, you know, there may be problems, but everybody, you know, hoping that the Adani FPO will collapse. What will be the impact? What will be the political impact if the Adani FPO collapses? Why ultra high net individuals investing in Adani? Why did Adani not collapse? I mean, it's crazy. It makes no sense anymore. Let's look at the bigger picture. Let's understand what the world is saying, MR. The world is saying that we are a bright spot. The world is saying that there is optimistic growth forecast. There is higher capital expenditure. There's a rebound of private consumption. There's a near universal vaccination coverage. There's strengthening of the balance sheets of the corporates. Well-capitalized public sector banks. Right? Well-capitalized public sector banks. And of course, needless to mention, fantastic news channels like Republic. Everything's good about India. I don't know what the problem is, MR. I want this negativity to stop. The World Bank is predicting we're going to grow at 6.6%. The world is growing at 1.7%. And these people are crying.
Yes.
I mean, MR, if I'll get into the details of the budget later. I just wanted to wake up this morning and tell people, for God's sake, the ADP is pegging our growth at 7.2. Asia is growing at 4%. We're 3% ahead of Asia. And we are contributing to the Asian average.
Exactly.
You know, MR,
today India is very heavy weight in the global. Very heavy weight for the global economy because we are the lone bright spot. And despite, you know, there are doomsayers about the American economy, I don't care about it. And despite all these things, now the growth projection is around 7% for this fiscal. And the next year already the numbers are around 6.5 to 7%. Now, the most important thing you pointed out, Arnab, is that the Indian entrepreneur has come off stage. There is a huge respect. I'm sure Sohail will second me on this. Usually he doesn't, but at least on this he will do it. That the Indian entrepreneur has come on stage. There is a brand value attached to the Indian entrepreneur. And till date, we had a Tata or an Ambani doing it. Today we have millions of them conquering places as distant as Russia or America or Japan. Yeah. Sohail?
Louder. Sohail, louder. Yeah, Sohail, go louder.
I said Arnab is an example of entrepreneurship.
No, I was
From a nation of shopkeepers, we become a nation of entrepreneurs.
Sir, I was pulling your leg. Sorry. I was just pulling your leg, nothing else. In the morning, let us not be so...
No, I'm only responding to you. I don't know which leg you're worried about. I'm only responding to the comment. I said I agree with you. I think when you're in Dubai, there's a bit of a signal lag.
No. I thought you were too serious. I thought I'll pull you on a budget day. That's all, sir.
No, he's never serious.
It'll take you another lifetime to pull me, but never mind. Continue.
Okay. Now the point here is the Indian entrepreneurs has come of age and he's dominating the global commerce and industry. That is a big salute, I think, required from the industry to this government. because Indian entrepreneurs were always there, but they never flourished. They were always kept on a tight leash by the government. There were crony capitalism. There were policies which were done to favor a particular few. There were never policies that were generally for the entrepreneur class as a whole. All these things are behind us. We have insolvency code. We have taxes more or less settling. Of course, as a chartered accountant, I will put the hat and say you can still further tweak here and there. But the macro picture that you wanted, Arnab, is that it is the sweetest spot that we can ever have in the Indian economic macroeconomic history of this country.
No, you saw the economic survey. We all saw the economic survey. I know what we thought about it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I thought it was conservative also, Ashish. I thought it was conservative. They are saying fiscal broad range, such a broad range, right? 6 to 6.8%. Why such a broad range, fiscal? Are they lowering expectations, Ashish?
Arnab, so Arnab, just before you walked in, I mentioned about the outlook and the roadmap which has for this budget that the economic survey has laid. We are looking, I mean, the people are fixated with the fiscal deficit number, but I think there are innumerable, tailwinds as far as India is concerned. I mean, just take a look at it. Inflation has been coming down. So
let's talk about fiscal deficit. Let's talk about fiscal deficit. I want to take you up on fiscal deficit. I think Nasir also wants to come in maybe on that. So my question is, will there be a moderated fiscal deficit target? You know, fiscal deficit been growing past few years, maybe because of the pandemic, Nasir. This time, will the finance minister take a more moderated approach from the heights of 9% or more in 21 to ensure some kind of a delicate balance between building growth momentum and retaining fiscal prudence? Or will we say, let's just grow, let's just build, let's just spend, you know? What do you think?
Good morning, Arnab. Great to be back on your show, and wish you and the Republic team all the very best for the new year. So, before, I mean, that's a fantastic question you raised. See, I think if you have to look back at the historical numbers to get some idea on gross borrowings for the central government and as far as India is concerned. So, there is no doubt that there has to be a lot of strike a right balance, Arnab, between your fiscal number, deficit number, which is going to come out. Now, I'll give you certain numbers, which I was going through yesterday as well, Arnab. Our gross borrowing for the next fiscal year, and this is from a report which has come out across some 45 odd economists, are projecting a number of close to about 16 trillion rupees. So in terms of dollar terms, it's about $198 billion. Now, obviously, that is higher than the estimated number, Arnab, because the estimated number for this fiscal, for example, was 14.2 trillion rupees. Now, if you look at historical debt, right from the 1970s, the last 50-year average, we've been always been between 4 to 5%.
Yeah.
But the point to be noted here is that we didn't have a COVID-like situation in the past. We've had a situation where in 2019, all the way end of 2019, about all of last year, we saw the government putting out doles, putting out money in the hands of the citizens, certain sectors like MSME, SME. So obviously, I think the number is going to be far more higher than the average, and our sense is that this is going to be somewhere between a 6.8 to a 7.2% odd number.
Yeah.
I told you the estimated number is about 16 trillion rupees. To put another perspective in place, Arnab, when the Narendra Modi government came in 2014, our fiscal...
One minute. Question being, I'm aware of those numbers, but in the last 2 years, and by the way, Jim Rogers is joining us from Singapore, Abhishek. He's chairman of Rogers Holdings. He loves China, hates India, and I fight with him every single budget morning. And he should be changing his opinion now. He should be changing his opinion because China has become the black hole of darkness in the world economy, being propped up by a resurgent India. Jim?
Good morning. I love India, I love China, and I love Arnab.
That's okay. No, but have you changed your opinion or not over the last 1 year?
Well, I'm bullish on China. I think China is growing well, and I'm bullish on India, as long as India does the right thing. I mean, building big deficits is not good for India. India cannot become the great country it should be if it has big deficits and builds up debt.
Sorry, can you tell me that again? What exactly is your problem? Because what do you want the fiscal deficit? He wants the fiscal deficit to be 1%. He doesn't want us, MR, the problem with him is he doesn't want us, to spend. He doesn't want India to spend on infrastructure. He doesn't want India to build the roads, build the highways, to build the competitive infrastructure. He doesn't realize that same fiscal deficit that he's talking about is the very reason why we have a universally successful vaccination scheme, whereas his country is falling down the black hole of endless COVID cycles. So I think, Emma, let's take Jim on a little bit out here. Every single budget morning he does this from Singapore. He is what I call an institutional short seller. He is a short seller. He is on China's side. No, MR fiscal deficit. I'm tired of these people from foreign countries teaching us how to run our economy. Yes, MR.
Let me tell Jim,
MR, go for it, MR.
Jim, listen.
Go for it, MR.
Fiscal deficit, don't be like an economics professor.
Yeah, a bad economics professor.
Yeah, in the Indian context, it is becoming irrelevant. You understand our debt to GDP ratio is still manageable. It's less than 7. You are talking about countries which have more than 250, 300% and doing whatever they are doing. We have a robust revenue. You see that the budget estimates are being exceeded year on year in these troubled times. And we are collecting more money from our people. We are spending more money on the infrastructure. We are putting more money where you always wanted it. And when it is happening, you come and crib that the fiscal deficit is high. I don't understand. Apart from what malice that Arnab alludes to you, I don't see any sound economics in what you say, sir.
Well, I will repeat to you that throughout history, countries that debase the currency and build up big debts ultimately pay the price. India has been a great country in the past and can be a great country in the future, but not if you're irresponsible and just spend a lot of money. Of course, I love for you to
define irresponsibility.
Don't.
Can I have the guests on the left-hand side of the screen? Define irresponsibility.
I strongly object to that word irresponsible. We are spending the most responsibly. And how do you say that capital expenditure? There is infrastructure pipeline that is going on, which is 100 lakh crores. And you tell me what is wrong in spending on that? How does irresponsibility fit into the Indian infrastructure pipeline? Explain to me that.
Well, I don't know how old you are, sir, or whether you have children or not, but if you worry about the future, you will not take this approach. You will try to be more restrained and build up your sound economy. I'm all for infrastructure.
You mean to say America doesn't do it? American debt is $31 trillion.
In the future, but
American debt is $31 trillion.
Now.
American debt is $31 trillion, sir. How do you explain that? When American GDP is hardly 20, American debt is more than $31 trillion, US federal debt. How do you explain that?
Ashish Wakankar also coming in. Ashish, yes, go on, Ashish.
I'm sorry.
Go on, Ashish. Go on, Ashish.
No, I'm sorry. MR, you mentioned that America's debt is $31 trillion. You add to that the unfunded liability that they have, it's another $93 trillion. So you're looking at, so when somebody says this, and with all due respect to you, sir, Dr. Rogers, with all due respect to you, I don't really care about, it's not my business to comment on America, but I'll still give two numbers over here. America's total debt to GDP as a percentage of America's GDP is around 300%, and America's total debt to the global GDP is around 80-85%. I don't even know how and when, or if at all, they are going to even pay back. But that's none of my concern.
Ask him American inflation prices. Ask him the inflation rate in America, Ashish. Ask him the inflation rate in America. And no, tell him, ask him about the inflation rate in America.
Yeah, it's the first time.
I do not want India to wind up
No,
like
this is the first time in the last 30 years that I have been in the markets. I had never in my wildest dream imagined that India's inflation will be lower than the developed world. I had never imagined India's inflation will be lower than US, UK and most of the developed world. And I think that is remarkable. The quality of fiscal deficit is all that matters, Dr. Rogers, that and we are not spending irresponsibly. There is a dedicated infrastructure pipeline. There is productivity linked incentives which have been given, and that has been done out of rationalization of petroleum subsidies. It's one of the most rational way in which the money has been spent. Plus, this is an exceptional year in which you had food and fertilizer subsidies adding, and which came as a rude shock because of the Ukraine crisis, and hence you have a 6.4. But as you move towards next year, you will see food and fertilizer, subsidy going down because of the inflation, and you will see fiscal deficit come down to around 5.8. We are, as per the set glide path, going to achieve 4.5% fiscal deficit by FY26. I have no, and I don't know if he gives me 2 minutes, I will explain the real bonanza that is coming India's way through the nano urea that the government has gone upon. We could actually be staring at, in the next 5 to 10 years, at abolishing entirely the fertilizer subsidy. Believe me, the finer parts is something, Dr. Rogers, you probably have missed. So the only difference of opinion I have.
No,
with you
I like this. No, don't. You're being too polite. You're being too polite. Sohail also wants to come in. Abhishek wants to come in. I would just say, two small points. The national debt of the US has increased every year over the last 10 years. And Jim, you're totally aware the United States has hit its $31.4 trillion legal limit on borrowing. So the United States is an economically illegal country in terms of its own borrowing numbers. Please understand.
Yes.
Jim, you agree or not? Jim, you agree or not?
I'm not saying the U.S. is doing a good thing. I'm saying I do not want India to wind up like the U.S. and like the UK.
Oh, we are not.
These were countries that were
We are
very
not,
rich and
Jim.
they went bankrupt. You want to do that?
Just to add some numbers, our debt as a proportion of GDP went up to about 90% because of the slippages that happened during the pandemic years. It's back to 80% now. So 85% now. So we are doing fine. We are controlling it. The government is aware of it. The government is absolutely in control of
this
it.
fiscal deficit thing, they are trying to say, I want to go to Sohail. This is what all the cynics try to do. They try to tell you are a macroeconomically unstable country. No, we are the most stable country macroeconomically. Our fiscal deficit will go down. It went over 10% only because of the pandemic. In fact, the debt of the states is also expected to ease. That is according to the Reserve Bank of India. So viewers, if you're watching today, have confidence. Have confidence. Take on people like Jim Rogers. Destroy their arguments with ease. And over. PK Basu is joining us this morning. And Sohail wants to come in as well. Sohail.
Jim, let me tell you 3 things about India. India is like the bumblebee. Aerodynamically, the bumblebee isn't supposed to fly because of its structure. But the bumblebee doesn't know that it flies happily. We will continue to soar in spite of all your macroeconomic, all your theorizing. Number 1. Number 2, John Maynard Keynes, who came from your profession, said in the long run, we are all dead. So let's not worry about what will happen 100 years ago. Number 3, why are we different? We are different because we have a consumptive economy. We don't have to rely on other countries to buy our arms. We don't have to create wars between countries in order to sell armaments. We don't have to do all these cheap tactics. We're in a great place. Respect that great place. You're in Singapore. You don't have any freedoms. I mean, you can barely, even your signal is weak. Even your internet is weak. So, we've come a long way. Give us credit. I love the fact that you're empathetic towards us. I love the fact that you care for us and you don't want us to fail. We won't fail. We need people who understand the realities of India, not the realities of economics. India is a country. It's not a classroom. We need to people to understand who are the practitioners and who are the recipients of any economic benefit. This is not a university classroom where you take out a book and say, oh, blah, 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 this is why you should fail. Having said all of this, Jim, I totally agree with you about responsibility. This government and this country has shown greater fiscal responsibility in the last 8 years than we have shown in the last 75. So cut us some slack. Give credit to India. We have transformed from a nation of shopkeepers to a nation of entrepreneurs. We've got progress through digitization. We are slowly replacing China as the manufacturing hub of the world. You know, it takes a lot to change a nation, a lot of time. We're doing it in double quick time. Respect that. And as far as fiscal deficit is concerned, you know, there's an old saying, with forms of government let fools contest, that which is governed best is best. Today, what is best for India is public spending. What is best for India is money coming to the hands of people who can then aspire to be like Jim, live in Singapore with very poor internet signals and still comment on the world. On that note, have a great day, my
And from Singapore
friend,
to Uruguay, PK is also joining us. But before that, from Singapore to Uruguay, and joining us is Dr. Andrew Ferris, he's CEO of Ecognosis Advisory Limited. He's been a regular voice on our budget programs. Dr. Andrew Ferris, thank you very much. You know, he has been, he analyzes asset markets with a particular focus on Asian economies. And he's been teaching at the London Metropolitan University and the City University of Hong Kong, authored several books. A fantastic person. Dr. Ferris, now budget day in India, you know, progressively less important than it used to be as we grow into being a bigger economy. And we don't just look at these annual regulatory checks to determine the direction of our economy. But I want you to tell us the big picture. We are no longer looking at recovery, while China has just begun reopening to the world at a time when even its industrial policies have contracted in 2022. Now, question to you is, do you think the global market's more leaning towards India? And we've been aggressively pushing policies to emerge as some kind of a balancing force to China. Do you think the budget can do anything in that direction? Dr. Ferris?
Actually, no, all right, because the budget represents a relatively small amount of the overall spending. I'm very interested in two areas. One, I want to see how much the capital part of the budget is going to increase. It took nearly 20% last budget. And the second point, that's going to be very tricky. I want to see defense spending. Asia is a hive of defense spending. India cannot be lagged behind. And also India, you know, is the third biggest importer of arms in the world. It's very interesting to see what the politics and the economics of the defense in this budget is going to be. Right now, I'm advising all my clients that the money is going to be made next year in equity markets that are connected with defense. Because the world, whether we like it or not, is spending a lot of money on arms. It might be legally reprehensible, but that's the reality of it. And India is a major area in that. It's a major knot in that. I'm very, very aware of the morality of the issue, but I'm looking very carefully at what India is doing.
From a broader perspective, just before you came in, and the question always goes, you know, there's a general election in India in 2024. Okay, you have a question. I think Dr. P.K. Basu wants to come in before that, Andrew. Dr. P.K. Basu is the chief economist of ICICI Securities. He's the author of the great book, Asia Reborn. I think he wants to either make a comment or come in on what you said. Yes, P.K.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you talk about defense as being really important. And India has actually done some interesting things on the defense front. There is serious import substitution going on. You know, India has been very dependent on imports of defense equipment from Russia. But over the last 4 or 5 years, and you know, continuing every year, there is a list of items that are essentially banned. You can't import them, and instead it's being produced at home. So increasingly, I think there will be a need to focus on some of the Indian defense manufacturers that are emerging. It's a long haul. India has been very import dependent for its defense equipment, but we are now in the process of beginning to see a serious amount of successful import substitution, and
But
I
that's
think
going to
you have
take
to look at
time, PK.
some of the Indian stocks.
Some of that stuff
are
goes into
focused
R&D.
and
Abhishek wants to add.
benefiting from
Abhishek.
this.
PK, you're a senior economist, but just a little bit of addition there. Import substitution, the moment you mention it, has a certain negative ring to it because of its past association with India and the socialist era. So I have to add there, because whatever import substitution is happening now is essentially being led by the private sector. So there are private sector joint ventures between those Indian firms and their foreign partners, and they are taking the lead there, be it in the defense sector or others. So that import substitution or Atmanirbharta is very different from what happened in the socialist past.
I want to go back to Andrew Ferris, and I want to spend next few minutes on
absolutely.
infrastructure.
I mean, there's no
infrastructure.
that this
you know what happens is what happens is I want to go back to infrastructure. I don't want to get into just defense and import substitution, etc. I take your point, Abhishek, but see, we have an election next year, Andrew.
Right? Jim.
Right, yeah, no, we have an election next year, Andrew, and we need this to be a growth-oriented budget, of course. Economists want fiscal deficit prudence, etc., etc. But with the kind of growth possibilities that the country has, and also the political factors, you would want to spend more in pro-people schemes. Can you still afford to, and should we go all out in our infrastructure push, Andrew? Even if it comes at the cost of taking a bit of leeway on these macro numbers.
Yes. Look, there's a very simple set of numbers here. Okay, the GDP growth of India in 22 was 8.7, in 23 was 7, and the 24 is likely to be 6.5. So India has been decelerating for 3 years. Fair enough, because of the COVID, because of the global situation. So now injection on infrastructure is very important, and here is where sometimes the money has been spent, but not spent widely, because we still go backwards and forwards on the area of transportation, on the area of railways, on the area of roads, and on the area of, let's say, even to the extent of airport building. Also, unfortunately, we cannot get away from the issue of decarbonization and the reduction of CO2 in the economy. And this could be easily combined with subsidies towards the area where India is a leader, and that is in solar energy and also in wind energy. And that is a combination of both investment and also climate policy. So it will be very interesting to see what happens there.
So would we expect then in that case, Nasir,
Yeah, I think
more, PK. Yeah, PK.
I think just looking at industrial performance, for instance, the World Steel Association just published data on steel production in 2022, and India, of course, is the second biggest producer of steel. But if you look at the top 10 producers of steel in the world, or the top 9, the only one of the top 9 steel producers in the world that saw steel output actually increase in 2022 was India. China's steel output declined. India's increased, in the latest month, increased more than 9%. So we're seeing a structural shift. And steel, I think, is really quite important to any industrializing economy. India is now the second biggest producer. Last year, about 125 million tons of steel. If you look back at history, only one country has ever produced more than 125 million tons of steel in a year, and that is, of course, China. China produces 8 times as much, but China has massive overcapacity, and the world needs to address the issue.
Well, I think we should go. Okay, so my own take is, PK. My take is, PK, that this is the time for us to go all out. Let us bet on ourselves. I say, MR, bet on ourselves. Let all the doomsday talkers go to hell. Let us focus. Let us spend more on urban infrastructure. Let us still give the money to the states. Let us increase Gati Shakti outlay. right? Let us increase our infrastructure pipeline. Let us increase our special financing schemes. Let's bet on ourselves.
Exactly. This is the moment, Arnab, we should seize it. And the government, in fact, should not be bothered about doomsayers talking about 6.5% fiscal deficit or 4.5% fiscal deficit. It is meaningless number. And I don't want a nanny out there to tell me what my BP should be or what my sugar should be. I know very well what it is, and I will manage because I am different. I am genetically different. I can manage myself. I have a huge domestic saving of 30%. Jim, you understand we have a huge domestic saving at 30%.
Did you just refer to Jim as a nanny?
Well.
He did. He did.
No,
as you know,
of course.
I love these budget programs on Republic.
It's one of my favorite countries in the world, but I care about your children. I care about your grandchildren. You don't care about your children and your grandchildren. I do.
See, you understand one thing. My fiscal deficit gets funded by my own domestic savings. My total borrowing from the outside world is less than 1% of my GDP. And if it comes, it comes. It doesn't come, it doesn't come. I manage my own capital. I manage my own fiscal deficit. I fund my own banks. The world doesn't fund me. So you understand, I'm a most stable country. And I have chosen a path of investment, recycling my enormous savings. Today, understand, my saving at a $3 trillion economy at 30% works out to close to $1 trillion. Where do I park it? I have to park it within myself, and I do it through the borrowings of the government, and I do it through the public sector banks.
Yeah.
What is your problem in this?
I don't know his problem. Every year I hope his problem goes away, Sohail. Every year he comes back with a bigger problem.
My problem is history and economics. History shows that
Jim's
if you
issues
debase
are
your
like
currency
Rahul
and your
Gandhi's.
balance sheet,
They have
you
a problem
suffer in the
for every
long run.
solution. If you
Look
give them
at
a
history.
solution,
If
they
you
will
don't
present a problem.
if you don't understand economics, look at history.
No, 1 minute.
Okay, what's
Wisdom doesn't necessarily come with age. You don't have to be a great economist in order to understand the economy. By that logic, a lot of entrepreneurs who then make it big in the world would have never. I mean, you have celebrated college dropouts, not we. You've celebrated school dropouts, not we. Jim, we reiterate the following, and your point is valid. The future of India is not going to be driven by Americans or Fijians or Norwegians. It'll be driven by Indians. Indians have shown over the past few years the following facets. Number one, great consumptive economy. Number two, tremendous resilience. Number three, the ability to innovate and to reimagine and recalibrate without disturbing the structure, the basic structure of the economy. Which country, Jim, tell me, would have done what it did for its people, what India did during the pandemic? Which country? Which prime minister would have taken a punt of shutting the country down? After we shut the country down, all you guys in the West followed, which is not surprising. We are a civilizational legacy. Y'all are Johnnies or Jims come lately. Number three, which country would have given free ration, free food to people who were going through the most devastating times in their lives due to the pandemic? So, Jim, cut us some slack. The last time we learned a lesson from someone in the West was in 1947. But when we unfurled that flag, we took charge of our own destiny. We became responsible. We're not an irresponsible country. We're not. We're not Pakistan. I think you've blurred the lines when you look at the subcontinent. We're not Pakistan. This is a country whose democracy has shown repeatedly that responsibility is embedded in not only our